5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello. Say hi. I'm being tortured. You see this? Yeah, you see this cute little face? I was, while that was playing, going to go get my tea. Apparently that's not allowed. He jumped up right when I was going live. Kind of rude. But welcome to another Cook in the Books, where I take that book list collecting dust in the corner, read it to you so you don't have to. Thanks for being here, everybody. Appreciate you. I'll let you trickle in while I try and get this terrorist off of my arm. I wonder if that'll flag my stream because I said a no word. Probably not. Not so great. Okay, I'm going to get up momentarily to go get my tea. There will not be a cat, or there likely will not be a cat on my arm and my leg and armrest of my chair when I come back. But I will be right back. I'm back. I forgot that was my little avatar thing when I shut my camera off. So it's kind of funny. How is everybody? How y'all doing? Does everybody remember what happened last time? I mostly do. I'm sure I won't catch everything on a recap, but not a big deal. I may be taking more tea drinking breaks than I normally do, because I do have a Tiny. Really? Really? No, I don't have glasses on. Little cough to finish what I was saying before I was rudely interrupted. You're a pain in the butt. Here, you want my hat? Want my hat? I'm sure Dom appreciates my hat. He's strategic choice too. But anyway. Okay. Let me look at a couple of things. While you do. Nope, this. Okay, never mind. All right, cool. Well, I'm here. I'm gonna say hi to chat. What's up, Legatus? How's it going? First, as almost usual, sometimes others beat you to it. Selena, my love, how are you? Welcome, if you're still here. Kel, hi. The Forbidden Kingdom is on Prime. We should do another watch party. Sure. Let's do it. That's the one that's sort of loosely kind of based off of Journey to the West, right? Yes? No? Maybe? Do you want to say? I want to. There we go. Yeah. There. I mean, and hopefully this thing decides to get off of my lap when I go to read. Dom on Rumble, hello. Hi. How's it going? Tommy, why are you still awake? But welcome. Glad you're here. Now that's just rude, Dom. I do have something that I need to read, and the way pinned messages work. Oh, there we go. Never mind. I figured it out. Rumble is weird, and thank you for the 20, Dom. I appreciate it. America. Hopefully my internet is good this week, unlike last week. Yeah, when you made me feel like I dropped while I was reading. How rude, by the way. What's ET? Or is that a typo? What do you mean you meant off? I think he just wants to take that stupid thing on the top of your head off. You said off. So I don't know what this means, what that clarification is. Never mind. Got it. Patrick, hi, how's it going? You're heavy. You're burdensome. So like his ass end is on my armrest for my chair. And then his front pretty paws are crossed across my leg, which is resting on the chair that's next to me. Ridiculous. Cats are not evil. I don't admit shit. Don't put words in my mouth. I am not feeding my cats to the monster. This is the monster. Yes, no monster. He's an adorable little monster. You got gunk in your eye. Okay. Yes, I was basically calling Frankenstein a coward, but hey, at least he went over to, he decided to go listen to his monster's story. Hi, Static. What you lolling at? All of the shenanigans so far, I'm sure. Yes, that is where we left off, so it's going to be interesting to see. I've never read this. And I don't think I've seen any of the visual media for like that follows the story exactly. So it'll be fun. Why is Tommy still awake? Oh, I know that life. My move would definitely be less cumbersome than yours. But I technically have moved internationally before. However, the military did it for me for the most part. I just packed everything up. They came. They took it away. They sent it where I was going. And then I flew into Seattle, bought my car, drove to my parents, drove down to Denver, say hi to my bro, and then went down to California. This is Tomby sleepwatching typing. Nice. Oh, I see. Yes, lol indeed. What's up, Tommy? How's it going? Tristan Casas wants Bregman to go to second base and Devers to third. Apparently, he doesn't want to lose first base, and Devers is an awful fielder. Yeah, that kid has some bad throws at times. Can you get down now? Okay, what if I put my other leg up and you lay down there to where I can have my arm back? Is that okay with you? But anyway, so last time we got into volume 2, like what, halfway through, I think, where he got home after learning that his youngest or one of his little brothers was murdered, and on his way there, he saw his monster in like the dead of the night. He knew that it was his creation that killed his brother, and he couldn't say anything when he got there because he thought that he was going to be crazy. And then he learns that she wasn't really his sister, but like she lived with his family for a while. Justine, I believe her name was accused of the murder because the still image of their mother was found in Justine's pocket, and it had last been on the little brother's person. So circumstantial evidence took place, and what I found interesting is she refused to say like where she was all night or like where she was visiting. So I had assumed maybe she had like some sort of illicit rendezvous that she was going to that evening, and that's why she couldn't give details on it, which eventually like she dies because even though his not cousin, but was originally technically his cousin, Caroline? God, why can I never remember her name? I'm so bad at that. Whatever. The chick that he loves that apparently was originally written as his cousin, but it was too spicy for the times, so they changed it to where she's not actually a blood relation, but was raised with them. And she acted like as a character witness for the girl once Victor reassured her that he knew who the murderer was and it wasn't Justine. So she trusted him enough to be a character witness, stand up for her, but she still got convicted, and they went to visit her. After the judgment came through, she admitted to doing it just because it was very weird. She's like, I might as well. I know in my heart that I didn't do it and I'll be with God, but whatever. She dies. Victor isn't, he's in the doldrums for a while, and his dad like reprimands him saying like, you're not the only one hurting here. We need you to, buck up, bud. Eventually he goes like hiking into the mountains and comes across his creation, who has a hard time, but eventually does convince him to listen to his story. And that's basically where we left off. All right, I'm going to adjust this stupid cat. I'm actually kind of glad that Sam's not here right now, unless he's lurking. I feel like he would not just lurk when I'm making fun of my cat, though. So, are you gonna? You're gonna fall that way. Thank you for giving my arm back, though. I appreciate it. Yes, readjust. Get comfortable. By all means. And here we are. This is Snow, if everybody doesn't, or if anybody doesn't know. He's a bastard from the north. We got him off the streets. And it's just funny to name a black cat Snow. Mew. Punk. He's the alpha of the house. Cats. Okay. I saw Tom B saying something. That was a typo. Aw, thank you, Legatus. I appreciate that. I missed it earlier. Yeah, I need to get a shipping container. It takes 6 weeks for stuff to go across the pond. That's insane. Crazy. Ooh, Tennessee, huh? I like Tennessee. I mean, really, I've only been to, I guess, I drove across it. So Chattanooga's in Tennessee, I think, right? But I went to Nashville. That was cool. All the honky tonks, which are the bars, but they're called honky tonks on Honky Tonk Row. It's pretty cool. It's possible. They could be in a battle of vanity. I want to be on stream the most. Steve's is a spring chicken, though. Much younger than this monster. Justine Moritz, who used to live with the Frankenstein family, is blamed for the murder. While Victor knows she did not commit the crime, she confesses. Yep, better summary than I did. Mine was long-winded with a lot of ums. I'm so white. The light up here is ridiculous. The question is, will he get another... I was going this entire time without talking about Dermy. Thank you. Thank you, Dom. Appreciate it. Coal. It looks more like coal than snow. Yeah, he does. Yeah. But that's less funny. And everybody in the neighborhood loves him. So. Yay, Crayon. Thank you for the snack, Cliff. Hi. How's it going? Just a reminder, because I sometimes tend to forget, and this will probably be the only one. I do have a Stream Elements link pinned in the comments on YouTube and Rumble. We are multi-streaming, dual streaming would be more apt. Yeah, so pinned at the top of chat in both locales is the link if anyone is feeling generous. No requirement whatsoever. But it's always appreciated if anyone sends anything. Was your evidence comment right, though? Yeah. That the circumstantial evidence, like someone could have put it in her pocket. The still, the likeness of their mother, Victor's mother. The sister had given it to the brother that day or night or recently. He was the last one to have it on him. And the next day after they found him, Justine, their like housekeeper or whatever, found it in Justine's clothing and immediately brought it to like the butler or whatever. And they immediately took it to the authorities, blah, blah, blah. She got falsely accused and was murdered by the state. Isn't that fun? All right. But like I warned earlier, for people that might have trickled in later, I do have a bit of a cough, so I'll be drinking tea a lot more than I usually do. But on that note, let's get started. Volume 2, Chapter 3. It is with considerable difficulty that I remember the original era of my being. All the events of that period appear confused and indistinct. A strange multiplicity of sensations seized me, and I saw, felt, heard, and smelt at the same time. And it was indeed a long time before I learned to distinguish between the operations of my various senses. By degrees, I remember, a stronger light pressed upon my nerves, so that I was obliged to shut my eyes. Darkness then came over me and troubled me, but hardly had I felt this when, by opening my eyes, as I now suppose, the light poured in upon me again. I walked, and I believe descended, but I presently found a great alteration in my sensations. Before, dark and opaque bodies had surrounded me, impervious to my touch or sight. But I now found that I could wander on at liberty with no obstacles which I could not either surmount or avoid. The light became more and more oppressive to me, and the heat wearying me as I walked, I sought a place where I could receive shade. This was the forest near Ingolstadt, and here I lay by the side of a brook resting from my fatigue, until I felt tormented by hunger and thirst. This roused me from my nearly dormant state, and I ate some berries which I found hanging on the trees or lying on the ground. I slaked my thirst at the brook, and then lying down was overcome by sleep. It was dark when I awoke. I felt cold also, and half frightened, as it were, instinctively, finding myself so desolate. Before I had quitted your apartment on a sensation of cold, I had covered myself with some clothes, but these were insufficient to secure me from the dews of night. I was a poor, helpless, miserable wretch. I knew and could distinguish nothing, but feeling pain invade me on all sides, I sat down and wept. Soon a gentle light stole over the heavens and gave me a sensation of pleasure. I started up and beheld a radiant form rise from among the trees. I gazed with a kind of wonder. Author's footnote, it was the moon. It moved slowly, but it enlightened my path, and I again went out in search of berries. I was still cold when under one of the trees I found a huge cloak, with which I covered myself and sat down upon the ground. No distinct ideas occupied my mind. All was confused. I felt light and hunger and thirst and darkness. Innumerable sounds rang in my ears, and on all sides various scents saluted me. The only object that I could distinguish was the bright moon, and I fixed my eyes on that with pleasure. Several changes of day and night passed, and the orb of night had greatly lessened, when I began to distinguish my sensations from each other. I gradually saw plainly the clear stream that supplied me with drink, and the trees that shaded me with their foliage. I was delighted when I first discovered that a pleasant sound, which often saluted my ears, proceeded from the throats of the little winged animals who had often intercepted the light from my eyes. I began also to observe with great accuracy the forms that surrounded me, and to perceive the boundaries of the radiant roof of light which canopied me. Sometimes I tried to imitate the pleasant songs of the birds, but was unable. Sometimes I wished to express my sensations in my own mode, but the uncouth and inarticulate sounds which broke from me frightened me into silence again. The moon had disturbed from the night, and again with a lessened form showed itself while I still remained in the forest. My sensations had by this time become distinct, and my mind received every day additional ideas. My eyes became accustomed to the light and to perceive objects in their right forms. I distinguished the insect from the herb, and by degrees one herb from another. I found that the sparrow uttered none but harsh notes, whilst some of the blackbird and thrush were sweet and enticing. One day, when I was oppressed by cold, I found a fire which had been left by some wandering beggars, and was overcome with delight at the warmth I experienced from it. In my joy, I thrust my hand into the live embers, but quickly drew it out again with a cry of pain. How strange, I thought, that the same cause should produce such opposite effects. I examined the materials of the fire, and to my joy found it to be composed of wood. I quickly collected some branches, but they were wet and would not burn. I was pained at this, and sat still watching the operation of the fire. The wet wood which I had placed near the heat dried, and itself became inflamed. I reflected on this, and by touching the various branches, I discovered the cause and busied myself in collecting a great quantity of wood that I might dry it and have a plentiful supply of fire. When night came on and brought sleep with it, I was in the greatest fear lest my fire should be extinguished. I covered it carefully with dry wood and leaves and placed wet branches upon it, and then, spreading my cloak, I lay on the ground and sunk into sleep. It was morning when I awoke, and my first care was to visit the fire. I uncovered it, and a gentle breeze quickly fanned it into a flame. I observed this also, and contrived a fan of branches, which roused the embers when they were nearly extinguished. When night came again, I found, with pleasure, that the fire gave light as well as heat, and that the discovery of this element was useful to me in my food, for I found some of the offals that the travelers had left had been roasted and tasted much more savory than the berries I gathered from the trees. I tried, therefore, to dress my food in the same manner, placing it on the live embers. I found that the berries were spoiled by this operation, and the nuts and roots much improved. Food, however, became scarce, and I often spent the whole day searching in vain for a few acorns to assuage the pangs of hunger. When I found this, I resolved to quit the place that I had hitherto inhabited, to seek for one where the few wants I experienced would be more easily satisfied. In this emigration, I exceedingly lamented the loss of the fire which I had obtained through accident, and knew not how to reproduce it. I gave several hours to the various consideration of this difficulty, but I was obliged to relinquish all attempts to supply it. And, wrapping myself up in my cloak, I struck across the wood towards the setting sun. I passed 3 days in these rambles, and at length discovered the open country. A great fall of snow had taken place the night before, and the fields were of one uniform white. The appearance was disconsolate, and I found my feet chilled by the cold damp outside that covered the ground. It was about 7 in the morning, and I longed to obtain food and shelter. At length I perceived a small hut on a rising ground, which had doubtless been built for the convenience of some shepherd. This was a new sight to me, and I examined the structure with great curiosity. Finding the door open, I entered. An old man sat in it near a fire over which he was preparing his breakfast. He turned on hearing a noise, and perceiving me, shrieked loudly, and quitting the hut, ran across the fields with a speed of which his debilitated form hardly appeared capable. His appearance different from any I had ever before seen, and his flight somewhat surprised me. But I was enchanted by the appearance of the hut. Here the snow and rain could not penetrate. The ground was dry, and it presented to me then as exquisite and divine a retreat as pandemonium appeared to the demons of hell after their sufferings in the lake of fire. I greedily devoured the remnants of the shepherd's breakfast, which consisted of bread, cheese, milk, and wine. The latter, however, I did not like. Then, overcome by fatigue, I lay down among some straw and fell asleep. It was noon when I awoke, and allured by the warmth of the sun, which shone brightly on the white ground, I determined to recommence my travels, and depositing the remains of the peasant's breakfast in a wallet I found, I proceeded across the fields for several hours, until at sunset I arrived at a village. How miraculous did this appear! The huts, the neater cottages, and stately houses engaged my admiration by turns. The vegetables in the gardens, the milk and cheese that I saw placed at the windows of some of the cottages allured my appetite. One of the best of these I entered, but I had hardly placed my foot within the door before the children shrieked and ran, and one of the women fainted. The whole village was roused. Some fled, some attacked me, until grievously bruised by stones and many other kinds of missile weapons, I escaped to the open country and fearfully took refuge in a low hovel, quite bare, and making a wretched appearance after the palaces I had beheld in the village. This hovel, however, joined a cottage of a neat and pleasant appearance, but after my late dearly bought experience, I dared not enter it. My place of refuge was constructed of wood, but so low that I could with difficulty sit upright in it. No wood, however, was placed on the earth, which formed the floor, but it was dry, and although the wind entered it by innumerable chinks, I found it an agreeable asylum from the snow and rain. Here then I retreated, and lay down, happy to have found a shelter, however miserable from the inclemency of the season and still from the barbarity of man. As soon as morning dawned, I crept from my kennel, that I might view the adjacent cottage and discover if I could remain in the habitation I had found. It was situated against the back of the cottage and surrounded on the sides, which were exposed by a pigsty and a clear pool of water. One part was open, and by that I crept in, but now I covered every crevice by which I might be perceived with stones and wood, yet in such a manner that I might move them on occasion to pass out. All the light I enjoyed came through the sty, and that was sufficient for me. Having thus arranged my dwelling and carpeted it with clean straw, I retired, for I saw the figure of a man at a distance, and I remembered too well my treatment the night before to trust myself in his power. I had first, however, provided for my sustenance for that day by a loaf of coarse bread, which I purloined, and a cup with which I could drink, more conveniently than from my hand, of the pure water which flowed by my retreat. The floor was a little raised, so that it was kept perfectly dry, and by its vicinity to the chimney of the cottage it was tolerably warm. Being thus provided, I resolved to reside in this hovel until something should occur which might alter my determination. It was indeed a paradise compared to the bleak forest, my former residence, the rain-dropping branches and dank earth. I ate my breakfast with pleasure and was about to remove a plank to procure myself a little water when I heard a step, and looking through a small chink, I beheld a young creature with a pail on her head passing before my hovel. The girl was young and of gentle demeanor, unlike what I have since found cottagers and farmhouse servants to be. Yet she was meanly dressed, a coarse blue petticoat and a linen jacket being her only grab. I think that's supposed to say garb, but it's spelled grab. Her fair hair was plaited but not adorned. She looked patient, yet sad. I lost sight of her, and in about a quarter of an hour she returned bearing the pail, which was now partly filled with milk. As she walked along, seemingly incommoded by the burden, a young man met her, whose countenance expressed a deeper despondence. Uttering a few sounds with an air of melancholy, he took the pail from her head and bore it to the cottage himself. She followed, and they disappeared. Presently, I saw the young man again with some tools in his hand, cross the field behind the cottage, and the girl was also busied, sometimes in the house and sometimes in the yard. On examining my dwelling, I found that one of the windows of the cottage had formerly occupied a part of it, but the panes had been filled up with wood. In one of these was a small and almost imperceptible chink through which the eye could just penetrate. Through this crevice, a small room was visible, whitewashed and clean, but very bare of furniture. In one corner, near a small fire, sat an old man, leaning his head on his hands in a disconsolate attitude. The young girl was occupied in arranging the cottage, but presently she took something out of a drawer which employed her hands, and she sat down beside the old man who, taking up an instrument, began to play, and to produce sounds sweeter than the voice of the thrush or the nightingale. It was a lovely sight, even to me, poor wretch, who had never beheld aught beautiful before. The silver hair and benevolent countenance of the aged cottager won my reverence, while the gentle manners of the girl enticed my love. He played a sweet, mournful air, which I perceived drew tears from the eyes of his amiable companion, of which the old man took no notice, until she sobbed audibly. He then pronounced a few sounds, and the fair creature, leaving her work, knelt at his feet. He raised her and smiled with such kindness and affection that I felt sensations of a peculiar and overpowering nature. They were a mixture of pain and pleasure, such as I had never before experienced, either from hunger or cold, warmth or food. And I withdrew from the window, unable to bear these emotions. Soon after this, the young man returned, bearing on his shoulders a load of wood. The girl met him at the door, helped to relieve him of his burden, and taking some of the fuel into the cottage, placed it on the fire. Then she and the youth went apart into a nook of the cottage, and he showed her a large loaf and a piece of cheese. She seemed pleased, and went into the garden for some roots and plants, which she placed in water and then upon the fire. She afterwards continued her work whilst the young man went into the garden and appeared busily employed in digging and pulling up roots. After he had been employed thus about an hour, the young woman joined him and they entered the cottage together. The old man had, in the meantime, been pensive, but on the appearance of his companions he assumed a more cheerful air, and they sat down to eat. The meal was quickly dispatched. The young woman was again occupied in arranging the cottage. The old man walked before the cottage in the sun for a few minutes, leaning on the arm of the youth. Nothing could exceed in beauty the contrast between these two excellent creatures. One was old, with silver hairs and a countenance beaming with benevolence and love. The younger was slight and graceful in his figure, and his features were molded with the finest symmetry. Yet his eyes and attitude expressed the utmost sadness and despondency. The old man returned to the cottage, and the youth, with tools different from those he had used in the morning, directed his steps across the field. Night quickly shut in, but to my extreme wonder I found that the cottagers had a means of prolonging light by the use of tapers, and was delighted to find that the setting of the sun did not put an end to the pleasure I experienced in watching my human neighbors. In the evening, the young girl and her companion were employed in various occupations which I did not understand, and the old man again took up the instrument which produced the divine sounds that had enchanted me in the morning. So soon as he had finished, the youth began, not to play, but to utter sounds that were monotonous, and neither resembling the harmony of the old man's instrument, nor the songs of the birds. I since found that he read aloud, but at that time I knew nothing of the science of words or letters. The family, after having been thus occupied for a short time, extinguished their lights and retired, as I conjectured, to rest. I find it curious that he can't speak or understand what speech is, like what they're saying to each other, but he knows what type of birds are, which types of birds are which. Maybe it was he learned later on. I don't know. It just seemed like in the middle of the story he was saying that he figured out. Maybe I misread that passage. I don't know. What do you guys think so far? I find it funny how Rumble, like, so I can see this emoji and then I can't see these ones in StreamYard. So maybe StreamYard just doesn't have the coding for that, for those. Because the American flag is greater than the Canadian flag. But that's not what this shows me in StreamYard. And then success is like the freaking baby meme. If I'm Victor, I'm saying fine story, but can we just get to the part where you killed my brother? Yeah. I mean, technically it's just an assumption at this point. We don't actually have proof that it was the creature that killed his brother. Oh, finish reading, Tiffany, and maybe... Yeah. It's like a thanks for the backstory chapter. Slightly boring. I think that you're a pain in the ass. See if I can find it. I can prove it to you. No, it was over here. Right here. You're not going to be able to see it, are you? Ha! You can see it. It says grab. G-R-A-B. I win. Ha. Challenge accepted, motherfucker. Yep. Still just showing USA instead of the flowing. Maybe that's it because it's a moving emoji. Is there a term for that? An emoji that moves like whatever. Doesn't matter. That's what you get, Static. I'm not going to keep doing this, but yeah, it doesn't show Trump either, but it's a moving one. But the baby one doesn't. The success one doesn't move. You're a troll. Bit of a punk. Oh, don't worry, Dom. I can see it when on Rumble on my browser, but it's just on StreamYard. It doesn't come up. And technically, the Canadian flag doesn't move, so my guess about it being an emoji that has movement is also debunked just with that. Oh, Restream doesn't either. I'm using StreamYard. I have never tried Restream from the hosting side of things. I don't know how different it would be, but it's slightly. I didn't know that about member emojis on YouTube. Interesting. I wasn't correcting you. I just didn't know if you... Shut the fuck up. No one asked you. This motherfucker.
She always has to be right.
I do always have to be right. Fuck you. So do you.
Yes, but the difference is I am actually right.
Do not engage, Tiffany. Don't you fucking laugh at him. Tram? What? Tram cripple is takeover? What is tram? Oh, are you gonna go to your dad? No? Okay. Can you take the cat?
No.
Well, you don't have a choice. I think you opened the cabinet. Oh, you were saying team. Way to fail, Kel. Yes, you are correct, Dom. I don't know. What is this? What is BTTV? Well, when I have to explain jokes to you from the chat while you're streaming, you don't really have a leg to stand on. Put on some gloves. I didn't ask for excuses. I don't think chat did either. All right, I'm going to go warm up my tea. I'll be back. Discuss amongst yourselves. Cats got spoiled and I fed them early. Okay, that's loud, sir. No one wants to listen to Jeremy while they're listening to me. You okay in there? Okay. Dom, good luck. Fucking good luck. I need progress reports on this. Ew, 1 degree? Let me see what it is here. Can you guys hear Jeremy in the background? If you can, blame my brother. It is 16 degrees here, so it's not as bad as you, Kel. Can you turn that down, please?
No.
Michael.
I can't right now. Wait 1 second.
Okay. You guys get to listen to Jeremy for a few more moments. Thank you. Yeah, fuck you too. Better Twitch TV chat mod. Plugin. Okay, gotcha. Dude, I saw that on Twitter earlier. Like it flooded and then froze. That's insane. And that's what you were talking about one day in the future. Is going to be happy. Michael,
What?
I would like you to know that Dom says, I found your brother on Twitter. I'm going to slowly change him into a Yankees fan. Ha. That's what I was saying earlier. I need progress reports on this. Then he said one day in the future, he's going to be wearing a Yankees hat. He said, an Yankees hat. And you're going to be like, what the? They can't see you because I'm in here.
I don't care.
Okay. He's got a dumbfounded look on his face like, are you stupid? Ew, no, that's not going to happen either. One, it's Canadian. No. Two, fuck the Blue Jays. Hate the Yankees more, but still fuck the Blue Jays. I got you beat.
The best thing Canada did for baseball was get rid of the Expos so that Pedro could come to the Red Sox.
Did you hear that, Legatus? You probably have no reference whatsoever to that. But maybe. Pedro was my favorite player growing up. Yeah. That's not what you guys came here for, to hear Jeremy Spurg out. Let's go into Jeremy's chat and tell him to be quiet. Don't let's go Expos. Okay, Static. No one asked you what the temperature was in freaking Arizona. No, I don't need that shit. Uh-huh. You got it right, Dom. I can't read this because it's misspelled. I'm not bringing up your comment, Static. Seriously? What? That's nuts, Kel. Are you trolling right now? I don't know if I believe you. I've gone to MLB games my entire life. I hate the Mariners because that was the closest team. Well, it was probably equidistance to Denver, but we had family in Washington, so we'd go to Red Sox Mariners games.
The Rockies didn't exist until like 97.
I had that thought when I was saying that.
It's actually like 92 or 93.
So we could have technically, but no one cared about the Rockies back then.
I liked Dante Bichette and Andre Stella
Gesundheit. Although I do remember Stella Raga.
Eric Young hit the first home run for the Rockies in Coors Field.
That would be cool. Anyway, I'm not here to have a conversation with my brother without you guys. I don't even know if you can hear him, but... Clinton, hi. Did anyone else come in and I missed them? I don't think so.
The best thing the Mariners did for baseball was give the Red Sox Jason Varitek.
We can discuss this on a stream later. Shooting the shit with my brother. Okay, you're going to have to side with whatever... Okay, so this was about my brother. So, Recef with an F. The cripple. It's not like I said I hate him. He's just not my cup of tea. He's better than Will Ferrell. I think you'll get over it, Clinton.
She liked the Will Ferrell movie.
I like 2 Will Ferrell movies, Michael. Probably technically 3 because I like the Lego movie. Thinking he's doing some sort of gotcha. I mean, technically, people cared about the Rockies in like 07, but you know, we came in and we were like,
fuck them and fuck their
know your
fucking
fucking place.
systems because I couldn't fucking go to the goddamn World Series.
Yeah, my brother was going to college out here in 07 and their ticketing system was complete and total shit. So none of us could go to a game. It was very annoying. For those that don't know, the Red Sox beat the Rockies in 2007 in the World Series. So that's what that reference was. That's cool. I had like a farm league for the Diamondbacks in my hometown. I don't think they're still part of it, though. I don't know. I feel like my mom said that they weren't, but James, where'd you go? The chat keeps moving. Hi. How's it going? I didn't compare them. We were just talking about like movies and shit. I don't exactly remember. Yeah, like Bill Murray is on a different level completely. I think we were talking about Groundhog's Day, and that's Groundhog Day when that came up. And I mentioned that I'm not a big Will Ferrell fan. Not Will Ferrell, Bill Murray fan. Dom, why would I bring up the other year when you do it for me? Literally by this comment. Oh, the other year, he's talking about 2004. You guys should look up the World Series and how that went in 2004, if you don't already know. I'm not going to disagree with this. Yes, you did, James. He was stealing some tea that I made earlier, I think. Actually, no, he made his own. Oh no, you've been sick since Saturday? I had the flu like 2 weeks ago. Literally 2 weeks ago, actually. On the nose. And a couple of days ago, I started getting this stupid little cough, but taking Dayquil. And then I had a ginger honey drink last night, and I woke up and was so much better, so I didn't have to go get Flonase or anything. I was really happy. Grunkin has broken my brain for whenever someone says I'm not a big fan of. Not a big fan of the government. 30 on 30. I understand your plight. But moving on, let's go to chapter 4. Volume 2, Chapter 4. I lay on my straw, but I could not sleep. I thought of the occurrences of the day. What chiefly struck me was the gentle manners of these people, and I longed to join them, but dared not. I remembered too well the treatment I had suffered the night before from the barbarous villagers, and resolved, whatever course of conduct I might hereafter think it right to pursue, that for the present I would remain quietly in my hovel, watching and endeavoring to discover the motives which influenced their actions. The cottagers arose the next morning before the sun. The young woman arranged the cottage and prepared the food, and the youth departed after the first meal. This day was passed in the same routine as that which preceded it. The young man was constantly employed out of doors, and the girl in various laborious occupations within. The old man, whom I soon perceived to be blind, employed his leisure hours on his instrument or in contemplation. Nothing could exceed the love and respect which the younger cottagers exhibited towards their venerable companion. They performed towards him every little office of affection and duty with gentleness, and he rewarded them by his benevolent smiles. They were not entirely happy. The young man and his companion often went apart and appeared to weep. I saw no cause for their unhappiness, but I was deeply affected by it. If such lovely creatures were miserable, it was less strange that I, an imperfect and solitary being, should be wretched. Yet why were these gentle beings unhappy? They possessed a delightful house, for such it was in my eyes, and every luxury. They had a fire to warm them when chill, and delicious viands when hungry. They were dressed in excellent clothes, and still more, they enjoyed one another's company and speech, interchanging each day looks of affection and kindness. What did their tears imply? Did they really express pain? I was at first unable to solve these questions, but perpetual attention and time explained to me many appearances which were at first enigmatic. A considerable period elapsed before I discovered one of the causes of the uneasiness of this amiable family. It was poverty, and they suffered that evil in a very distressing degree. Their nourishment consisted entirely of the vegetables of their garden and the milk of one cow, which gave very little during the winter, when its masters could scarcely procure food to support it. They often, I believe, suffered the pangs of hunger very poignantly, especially the two younger cottagers. For several times they placed food before the old man when they reserved none for themselves. This trait of kindness moved me sensibly. I had been accustomed during the night to steal a part of their store for my own consumption. But when I found that in doing this I inflicted pain on the cottagers, I abstained and satisfied myself with berries, nuts, and roots, which I gathered from a neighboring wood. I discovered also another means through which I was enabled to assist their labors. I found that the youth spent a great part of each day in collecting wood for the family fire. And during the night, I often took his tools, the use of which I quickly discovered, and brought home firing sufficient for the consumption of several days. Have a good night, James. I remember the first time that I did this, the young woman, when she opened the door in the morning, appeared greatly astonished on seeing a great pile of wood on the outside. She uttered some words in a loud voice, and the youth joined her, who also expressed surprise. I observed with pleasure that he did not go to the forest that day, but spent it in repairing the cottage and cultivating the garden. By degrees, I made a discovery of still greater moment. I found that these people possessed a method of communicating their experience and feelings to one another by articulate sounds. I perceived that the words they spoke sometimes produced pleasure or pain, smiles or sadness, in the minds and countenances of the hearers. This was indeed godlike science, and I ardently desired to become acquainted with it. But I was baffled in every attempt I made for this purpose. Their pronunciation was quick, and the words they uttered, not having any apparent connection with visible objects, I was unable to discover any clue by which I could unravel the mystery of their reference. By great application, however, and after having remained during the space of several revolutions of the moon in my hovel, I discovered the names that were given to some of the most familiar objects of discourse. I learned and applied the words fire, milk, bread, and wood. I learned also the names of the cottagers themselves. The youth and his companion had each of them several names, but the old man had only one, which was father. The girl was called sister, or Agatha, and the youth Felix, brother, or son. I cannot describe the delight I felt when I learned the ideas appropriated to each of these sounds and was able to pronounce them. I distinguished several other words without being able as yet to understand or apply them, such as good, dearest, unhappy. I spent the winter in this manner. The gentle manners and beauty of the cottagers greatly endeared them to me. When they were unhappy, I felt depressed. When they were rejoiced, I sympathized in their joys. I saw few human beings besides them, and if any other happened to enter the cottage, their harsh manners and rude gait only enhanced to me the superior accomplishments of my friends. The old man, I could perceive, often endeavored to encourage his children, as sometimes I found that he called them, to cast off their melancholy. He would talk in a cheerful manner, with an expression of goodness that bestowed pleasure even upon me. Agatha listened with respect, her eyes sometimes filled with tears, which she endeavored to wipe away unperceived, but I generally found that her countenance and tone were more cheerful after having listened to the exhortations of her father. It was not thus with Felix. He was always the saddest of the group, and even to my unpracticed senses he appeared to have suffered more deeply than his friends. But if his countenance was more sorrowful, his voice was more cheerful than that of his sister, especially when he addressed the old man. I could mention innumerable instances which, although slight, marked the dispositions of these amiable cottagers. In the midst of poverty and want, Felix carried with pleasure to his sister the first little white flower that peeped out from beneath the snowy ground. Early in the morning, before she had risen, he cleared away the snow that obstructed her path to the milk house, drew water from the well, and brought the wood from the outhouse where, to his perpetual astonishment, he found his store always replenished by an invisible hand. In the day, I believe he worked sometimes for a neighboring farmer because he often went forth and did not return until dinner, yet brought no wood with him. At other times, he worked in the garden, but as there was little to do in the frosty season, he read to the old man and Agatha. This reading had puzzled me extremely at first, but by degrees I discovered that he uttered many of the same sounds when he read as when he talked. I conjectured, therefore, that he found on the paper signs for speech which he understood, and I ardently longed to comprehend these also. But how was that possible when I did not even understand the sounds for which they stood as signs? I improved, however, sensibly in this science, but not sufficiently to follow up any kind of conversation, although I applied my whole mind to the endeavor. For I easily perceived that, although I eagerly longed to discover myself to the cottagers, I ought not to make the attempt until I had first become master of their language, which knowledge might enable me to make them overlook the deformity of my figure, for with this also the contrast perpetually presented to my eyes had made me acquainted. I had admired the perfect forms of my cottagers, their grace, beauty, and delicate complexions. But how was I terrified when I viewed myself in a transparent pool? At first I started back, unable to believe that it was indeed I who was reflected in the mirror. And when I became fully convinced that I was in reality the monster that I am, I was filled with the bitterest sensations of despondence and mortification. Alas! I did not yet entirely know the fatal effects of this miserable deformity. As the sun became warmer and the light of day longer, the snow vanished, and I beheld the bare trees and the black earth. From this time, Felix was more employed, and the heart-moving indications of impending famine disappeared. Their food, as I afterwards found, was coarse, but it was wholesome, and they procured a sufficiency of it. Several new kinds of plants sprang up in the garden, which they dressed, and these signs of comfort increased daily as the season advanced. The old man, leaning on his son, walked each day at noon, when it did not rain, as I found it was called when the heavens poured forth its water. This frequently took place, but a high wind quickly dried the earth, and the season became far more pleasant than it had been. My mode of life in my hovel was uniform. During the morning, I attended the motions of the cottagers, and when they were dispersed in various occupations, I slept. The remainder of the day was spent in observing my friends. When they had retired to rest, if there was any moon, or the night was starlight, I went into the woods and collected my own food and fuel for the cottage. When I returned, as often as it was necessary, I cleared their path from the snow and performed those offices that I had seen done by Felix. I afterwards found that these labors, performed by an invisible hand, greatly astonished them, and once or twice I heard them on these occasions utter the words, "good spirit," "wonderful." But I did not then understand the signification of these terms. My thoughts now became more active, and I longed to discover the motives and feelings of these lovely creatures. I was inquisitive to know why Felix appeared so miserable and Agatha so sad. I thought, foolish wretch, that it might be in my power to restore happiness to these deserving people. When I slept or was absent, the forms of the venerable blind father, the gentle Agatha, and the excellent Felix flitted before me. I looked upon them as superior beings who would be the arbiters of my future destiny. I formed in my imagination 1,000 pictures of presenting myself to them and their reception of me. I imagined that they would be disgusted until, by my gentle demeanor and conciliating words, I should first win their favor and afterwards their love. These thoughts exhilarated me and led me to apply with fresh ardor to the acquiring of the art of language. My organs were indeed harsh but supple, and although my voice was very unlike the soft music of their tones, yet I pronounced such words as I understood with tolerable ease. I was as the ass and the lapdog, yet surely the gentle ass, whose intentions were affectionate, although his manners were rude, deserved better treatment than blows and execration. The pleasant showers and genial warmth of spring greatly altered the aspect of the earth. Men who before this change seemed to have been hid in caves, dispersed themselves and were employed in various arts of cultivation. The birds sang in more cheerful notes, and the leaves began to bud forth on the trees. Happy, happy earth, fit habitation for gods, which, so short a time before, was bleak, damp, and unwholesome. My spirits were elevated by the enchanting appearance of nature. The past was blotted from my memory, the present was tranquil, and the future gilded by bright rays of hope and anticipations of joy. And I have a feeling in the next chapter, all of that is going to be completely destroyed. I don't do Robitussin. Never liked Robitussin. After what happened yesterday. Did they pass that stupid bill, Clinton? I think they were voting on it yesterday, weren't they? Uh-oh. Wi-Fi's giving you trouble, Cliff? And I saw that James had to leave while I was reading. Better chance of happening, me to convince your brother to become a Yankees fan or you to convince my brother he's a simp? Simp. He admits it. We screenshot it and he tries to deny it. So definitely the simp part. Question: how much time has passed from the monster's journey until this story he's telling to Victor for him to learn the language? So spring just came around and he woke up in the beginnings of winter, I think. So maybe 6 months. Just recall, he's really only learning basics. He's like a kid. But when you don't have any other frame of reference for language, when you just have nothing, really, I think it's probably easier to pick up on one language and how it functions the longer you hear it. Having known a language already and trying to learn a different one is where the further difficulty lies. And I speak that from experience. Okay, there's a difference between liking medicine and like medicine that's disgusting. So like Dayquil is just a pill that tastes like nothing. You just take it with a drink, barely even notice it going down. Robitussin is a liquid that is disgusting, and it has a disgusting taste. I'm going to punch my brother. Of course it did. It's really not invalid. Mind your business. I can show you peanut butter and pickle sandwiches all I freaking want. That has nothing to do with Robitussin being disgusting. Have you tried it yet, Devil? Have you fucking tried it? Oh, by the way, hi, Devil. Coming in all hot and mouthy. Punk ass. Shut up, Cliff. No, you fucking don't. Sorry. Looking at a couple of things. The annoyance on your face when your brother interrupts you reminds me of when Ryan is reading a super chat or something and gets interrupted by Jay laughing. I don't know how to take that, Dom, if that is a compliment or not. I remind you of Ryan. We're somewhat similar people. So, it seems that this stream is just going to be a bunch of backstory. I'm enjoying it. I'm sure some of you are probably bored. But it's necessary information. So I am just going to jump back into it. Nobody fucking asked you, Michael. Why don't you sit and do whatever the fuck you're doing in your room and leave me alone? Yeah, and you're a little bitch. Volume 2, Chapter 5. I now hasten to the more moving part of my story. I shall relate events that impressed me with feelings which, from what I have been, have made me what I am. Spring advanced rapidly. The weather became fine and the skies cloudless. It surprised me that what before was desert and gloomy should now bloom with the most beautiful flowers and verdure. Whatever. My senses were gratified and refreshed by 1,000 scents of delight and 1,000 sights of beauty. It was on one of these days when my cottagers periodically rested from labor. The old man played on his guitar and the children listened to him, that I observed the countenance of Felix was melancholy beyond expression. He sighed frequently, and once his father paused in his music, and I conjectured by his manner that he inquired the cause of his son's sorrow. Felix replied in a cheerful accent, and the old man was recommencing his music when someone tapped at the door. It was a lady on horseback, accompanied by a countryman as a guide. The lady was dressed in a dark suit and covered with a thick black veil. Agatha asked a question to which the stranger only replied by pronouncing, in a sweet accent, the name of Felix. Her voice was musical, but unlike that of either of my friends. On hearing this word, Felix came up hastily to the lady, who, when she saw him, threw up her veil, and I beheld a countenance of angelic beauty and expression. Her hair of a shining raven black and curiously braided. Her eyes were dark but gentle, although animated. Her features of a regular proportion, and her complexion wondrously fair, each cheek tinged with a lovely pink. Felix seemed ravished with delight when he saw her. Every trait of sorrow vanished from his face, and it instantly expressed a degree of ecstatic joy of which I could hardly have believed it capable. His eyes sparkled as his cheek flushed with pleasure, and at that moment I thought him as beautiful as the stranger. She appeared affected by different feelings. Wiping a few tears from her lovely eyes, she held out her hand to Felix, who kissed it rapturously and called her, as well as I could distinguish, his sweet Arabian. She did not appear to understand him, but smiled. He assisted her to dismount, and dismissing her guide, conducted her into the cottage. Some conversation took place between him and his father, and the young stranger knelt at the old man's feet and would have kissed his hand, but he raised her and embraced her affectionately. I soon perceived that although the stranger uttered articulate sounds and appeared to have a language of her own, she was neither understood by, nor herself understood, the cottagers. They made many signs which I did not comprehend, but I saw that her presence diffused gladness through the cottage, dispelling their sorrow as the sun dissipates the morning mists. Felix seemed peculiarly happy, and with the smiles of delight welcomed his Arabian. Agatha, the ever-gentle Agatha, kissed the hands of the lovely stranger, and pointing to her brother, made signs which appeared to me to mean that he had been sorrowful until she came. Some hours passed thus, while they, by their countenances, expressed joy, the cause of which I did not comprehend. Presently, I found, by the frequent recurrence of some sound which the stranger repeated after them, that she was endeavoring to learn their language, and the idea instantly occurred to me that I should make use of the same instructions to the same end. The stranger learned about 20 words at the first lesson. Most of them, indeed, were those which I had before understood, but I profited by the others. As night came on, Agatha and the Arabian retired early. When they separated, Felix kissed the hand of the stranger and said, "Good night, sweet Safi? Safi?" He sat up much longer, conversing with his father, and by the frequent repetition of her name, I conjectured that their lovely guest was the subject of their conversation. I ardently desired to understand them, and bent every faculty towards that purpose, but found it utterly impossible. The next morning, Felix went out to his work, and after the usual occupations of Agatha were finished, the Arabian sat at the feet of the old man, and taking his guitar, played some airs so entrancingly beautiful that they at once drew tears of sorrow and delight from my eyes. She sang, and her voice flowed in a rich cadence, swelling or dying away, like a nightingale of the woods. When she had finished, she gave the guitar to Agatha, who at first declined it. She played a simple air, and her voice accompanied it in sweet accents, but unlike the wondrous strain of the stranger. The old man appeared enraptured and said some words, which Agatha endeavored to explain to Safi, and by which he appeared to wish to express that she bestowed on him the greatest delight by her music. The days now passed as peaceably as before, with the sole alteration that joy had taken place of sadness in the countenance of my friends. Safi was always gay and happy. She and I improved rapidly in the knowledge of language, so that in 2 months I began to comprehend most of the words uttered by my protectors. In the meanwhile, also the black ground was covered with herbage, and the green banks interspersed with innumerable flowers. sweet to the scent and the eyes, stars of pale radiance among the moonlight woods. The sun became warmer, the nights clear and balmy, and my nocturnal rambles were an extreme pleasure to me, although they were considerably shortened by the late setting and early rising of the sun, for I never ventured abroad during daylight, fearful of meeting with the same treatment I had formerly endured in the first village which I entered. My days were spent in close attention that I might more speedily master the language, and I may boast that I improved more rapidly than the Arabian, who understood very little and conversed in broken accents, whilst I comprehended and could imitate almost every word that was spoken. Remember what I said about learning a second language versus a first? While I improved in speech, I also learned the science of letters as it was taught to the stranger, and this opened before me a wide field for wonder and delight. The book from which Felix instructed Safi was Volney's Ruins of Empires. I should not have understood the purport of this book had not Felix, in reading it, given very minute explanations. He had chosen this work, he said, because the declamatory style was framed in imitation of the Eastern authors. Through this work, I obtained a cursory knowledge of history and a view of the several empires at present existing in the world. It gave me an insight into the manners, governments, and religions of the different nations of the earth. I heard of the slothful Asiatics, of the stupendous genius and mental activity of the Grecians, of the wars and wonderful virtues of the early Romans, of their subsequent degenerating, of the decline of that mighty empire, of chivalry, Christianity, and kings. I heard of the discovery of the American hemisphere and wept with Safi over the hapless fate of its original inhabitants. These wonderful narrations inspired me with strange feelings. Was man indeed at once so powerful, so virtuous and magnificent, yet so vicious and base? He appeared at one time a mere scion of the evil principle, and at another as all that can be conceived as noble and godlike. To be a great and virtuous man appeared the highest honor that can befall a sensitive being. To be base and vicious, as many on record have been, appeared the lowest degradation, a condition more abject than that of the blind mole or harmless worm. For a long time, I could not conceive how one man could go forth to murder his fellow, or even why there were laws and governments. But when I heard details of vice and bloodshed, my wonder ceased, and I turned away with disgust and loathing. Every conversation of the cottagers now opened new wonders to me. While I listened to the instructions which Felix bestowed upon the Arabian, the strange system of human society was explained to me. I heard of the division of property, of immense wealth and squalid poverty, of rank, descent, and noble blood. The words introduced me to turn towards myself. I learned that the possessions most esteemed by your fellow creatures were high and unsullied descent united with riches. A man might be respected with only one of these advantages, but without either he was considered, except in very rare instances, as a vagabond and a slave, doomed to waste his powers for the profits of the chosen few. And what was I? Of my creation and creator, I was absolutely ignorant, but I knew that I possessed no money, no friends, no kind of property. I was, besides, endued with a figure hideously deformed and loathsome. I was not even of the same nature as man. I was more agile than they, and could subsist upon coarser diet. I bore the extremes of heat and cold with less injury to my frame. My stature far exceeded theirs. When I looked around, I saw and heard of none like me. Was I then a monster, a blot upon the earth, from which all men fled and whom all men disowned? I cannot describe to you the agony that these reflections inflicted upon me. I tried to dispel them, but sorrow only increased with knowledge. Oh, that I had forever remained in my native wood, nor known nor felt beyond the sensations of hunger, thirst, and heat. Of what a strange nature is knowledge. It clings to the mind when it has once ceased on it, like a lichen on the rock. I wished sometimes to shake off all thought and feeling, but I learned that there was but one means to overcome the sensation of pain, and that was death, a state which I feared yet did not understand. I admired virtue and good feelings and loved the gentle manners and amiable qualities of my cottagers, but I was shut out from intercourse with them, except through means which I obtained by stealth, when I was unseen and unknown, and which rather increased than satisfied the desire I had of becoming one among my fellows. The gentle words of Agatha and the animated smiles of the charming Arabian were not for me. The mild exhortations of the old man and the lively conversation of the loved Felix were not for me. Miserable, unhappy wretch. Other lessons were impressed upon me even more deeply. I heard of the difference of sexes and the birth and growth of children, how the father doted on the smiles of the infant and the lively sallies of the older child, how all the life and cares of the mother were wrapped up in the precious charge, how the mind of youth expanded and gained knowledge of brother, sister, and all the various relationships which bind one human being to another in mutual bonds. But where were my friends and relations? No father had watched my infant days. No mother had blessed me with smiles and caresses. Or if they had, all my past life was now a blot, a blind vacancy in which I distinguished nothing. From my earliest remembrance, I had been as I then was in height and proportion. I had never yet seen a being resembling me, or who claimed any intercourse with me. What was I? The question again recurred, to be answered only with groans. I will soon explain to what these feelings tended, but allow me now to return to the cottagers, whose story excited in me such various feelings of indignation, delight, and wonder, but which all terminated in additional love and reverence for my protectors. For so I loved, in an innocent, half-painful self-deceit, to call them. So this seems to be where resentment is kicking in. I guess this is an ignorance is bliss moment of teaching. So Legatus is summarizing the events of the book, it seems. Or is that your response to letting me know your thoughts on it? In maybe a robotic nature? Enjoying the chapters overall is the most entertaining chapters. No, but it is necessary background information. Yep. Yeah, definitely need it to understand the other side of the story. I mean, technically we did get a lot of backstory with Victor from childhood till now. So that took the course of many chapters as well. Don't gay and happy mean the same thing? First, you can spell gay on Rumble. Technically, you can spell gay in the chat on YouTube as well, the proper way. Yes, they do. The words are basically interchangeable, but I think there's more of a nuanced definition for gay. Of course, the number one on Merriam-Webster is about the sexual. And the second one is too. Happy, excited, merry. Keenly alive and exuberant. That's the better definition for it. Having or inducing high spirits. So, like, it's more of a vibrant version of happy. There you go, Dom. Let's see, just to recap, you're saying it's easier to learn a language without knowing any other language than learning a new language when you know a language already. No, yes, that's correct. No need to say sorry. It's not confusing how you put it. Yes, that is basically what I'm saying. Because you don't have any preconceived notions of your own language to fight with the new language. So Japanese and English are not similar languages, like almost completely at all. Even Spanish and English, they're derived from Latin. They're Latin-based languages, but the sentence structure of English is different than the sentence structure of Spanish. It's significantly different than Japanese. Both of them are. So when you already know a language, you know how that language works, and you have to unlearn that language to learn a new language that basically is written and spoken completely differently. But when you have nothing, when you're just starting from scratch as a kid, that's why it's easier as a kid to learn multiple languages, so you can pick up on those things and be able to understand both, because you're just taking in all the information around you. And you have that capacity because your brain isn't fully developed when you're younger, and so it's able to absorb it more like a sponge. As you get older, it's harder and harder to do. I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but it's not a scientific thing at all for my senses. I'm just going to say flowers, static. That's all. All this talk of feelings from the monster is not a normal guy thing. Talking about experiences is, but not guy feelings. What about a child? Obviously, I was never a dude, never will be. But growing up as a boy, because basically the monster is a boy. He's not a full-grown adult human male. Was there a picture of Dermy in that description? In what description? It's all good, Dom. I was required to learn Spanish since junior high. So there's that. The video game thing. Yes, the video game thing. See, you were saying flaming gay earlier. Sam, hi. Of course, the first thing you say in chat is to correct me. Thank you. You jackass. Oh, gotcha. There's a lot of different things going on in chat. I understand now. I get it. I got it. I don't know if that's what the seriously is about. You're not putting a lot in your chats there, Static, so I can't interpret everything when it's just one word. Thanks. I saw this before I started reading. I have no idea what you're talking about, Cliff. 3D pig, 2D pure? I don't understand. Is that like leet speak stuff? I kind of figured, Sam. I'm just giving you shit. I know I rarely do that. I'm normally docile and sweet. I'll be right back. Warming up my tea again. What does my shirt say? Until Valhalla. It's a military expression when you lose a brother or sister in battle. I mean, technically it's a Viking Norse expression, but it's basically a way to say goodbye. See you in the other life until Valhalla. It was basically co-opted by the military from Vikings. Generally, it's like dying in battle, a warrior's death. When the Valkyrie comes down to bring you to Valhalla. It is from the Till Valhalla project, veteran owned. They use the proceeds to create like placards or bracelets, different things to honor the fallen. Should check them out. Are you calling me a liar saying I wasn't giving you shit? Oh, no. The opposite, the docile and sweet. Never mind. I got you. I'm going to judge your gay Skyrim. I'm not going to judge it in the same way that Prof judges your Skyrim past. Or lack thereof. 2D waifu is better than actual people. I don't know about that. You sure about that? Just a short form chant. So let me go back to it. I think I lost it. Oh, 3D pig, 2D pure. Oh, okay. I got it. Thank you, Cliff. So now you people, and then, okay, got it. Got it. We're on the same page. It's a good shirt. Seriously, Sam? Is that going to be the next one you play, Static? Skyrim job? Let's see. That was... Okay. Noted, Static. Sam added some dirty mods to his game. I could see it. I don't know how it works with the tentacles, but I'm sure there's ways, I guess. All right, guys. This is a good spot to end it for the evening. Next week we can finish volume 2, I think. Yeah. My throat's a little sore, so don't make it dirty. No. If I do one more, okay, I am slightly OCD about certain things. And there are 3 chapters left in this volume. Because next time it would take us into volume 3. Oh, wait. Okay, fine. I will do one more chapter. There are 9 chapters in this volume. You got lucky. Sort of. It's not a very long chapter, this chapter 9. Fine. I will do one more chapter. Spoiled. Is it chapter 6? Okay. If this ends on a cliffhanger, it is your own fault and you have but not to blame. It's yourselves. Volume 2, Chapter 6. Some time elapsed before I learned the history of my friends. It was one which could not fail to impress itself deeply on my mind, unfolding as it did a number of circumstances, each interesting and wonderful to one so utterly inexperienced as I was. The name of the old man was de Lacy. He was descended from a good family in France, where he had lived for many years in affluence, respected by his superiors and beloved by his equals. His son was bred in the service of his country, and Agatha had ranked with ladies of the highest distinction. A few months before my arrival, they had lived in a large and luxurious city called Paris, surrounded by friends and possessed of every enjoyment which virtue, refinement of intellect, or taste, accompanied by a moderate fortune, could afford. The father of Safi had been the cause of their ruin. He was a Turkish merchant and had inhabited Paris for many years when, for some reason which I could not learn, he became obnoxious to the government. He was seized and cast into prison the very day that Safi arrived from Constantinople to join him. He was tried and condemned to death. The injustice of his sentence was very flagrant. All Paris was indignant, and it was judged that his religion and wealth, rather than the crime alleged against him, had been the cause of his condemnation. Felix had accidentally been present at the trial. His horror and indignation were uncontrollable when he heard the decision of the court. He made at that moment a solemn vow to deliver him and then look around for the means. After many fruitless attempts to gain admittance to the prison, he found a strongly grated window in an unguarded part of the building, which lighted the dungeon of the unfortunate Mahometan. who, loaded with chains, waited in despair the execution of the barbarous sentence. Felix visited the grate at night and made known to the prisoner his intentions in his favor. The Turk, amazed and delighted, endeavored to kindle the zeal of his deliverer by promises of reward and wealth. Felix rejected his offers with contempt. Yet when he saw the lovely Safie, who was allowed to visit her father and who by her gestures expressed her lively gratitude, the youth could not help owning to his own mind that the captive possessed a treasure which would fully reward his toil and hazard. The Turk quickly perceived the impression that his daughter had made on the heart of Felix and endeavored to secure him more entirely in his interests by the promise of her hand in marriage, so soon as he should be conveyed to a place of safety. Felix was too delicate to accept his offer, yet he looked forward to the probability of the event as to the consummation of his happiness. During the ensuing days, while the preparations were going forward for the escape of the merchant, the zeal of Felix was warmed by several letters that he received from his lovely girl, who found means to express her thoughts in the language of her lover by the aid of an old man, a servant of her father who understood French. She thanked him in the most ardent terms for his intended services towards her parent, and at the same time she gently deplored her own fate. I have copies of these letters, for I found means during my residence in the hovel to procure the implements of writing, and the letters were often in the hands of Felix or Agatha. Before I depart, I will give them to you. They will prove the truth of my tale. But at present, as the sun is already far declined, I shall only have time to repeat the substance of them to you. Safie related that her mother was a Christian Arab, seized and made a slave by the Turks. Recommended by her beauty, she had won the heart of the father of Safie, who married her. The young girl spoke in high and enthusiastic terms of her mother, who, born in freedom, spurned the bondage to which she was now reduced. She instructed her daughter in the tenets of her religion and taught her to aspire to higher powers of intellect and an independence of spirit forbidden to the female followers of Mahomet. This lady died, but her lessons were indelibly impressed on the mind of Safie, who sickened at the prospect of again returning to Asia and being immured within the walls of a harem, allowed only to occupy herself with infantile amusements, ill-suited to the temper of her soul, now accustomed to grand ideas and a noble emulation of virtue. The prospect of marrying a Christian and remaining in a country where women were allowed to take a rank in society was enchanting to her. The day for the execution of the Turk was fixed, but on the night previous to it he quitted his prison and before morning was distant many leagues from Paris. Felix had procured passports in the name of his father, sister, and himself. He had previously communicated his plan to the former, who aided the deceit by quitting his house under the pretense of a journey and concealing himself with his daughter in an obscure part of Paris. Felix conducted the fugitives through France to Lyons and across Mont-Cenis to Leghorn, where the merchant had decided to wait a favorable opportunity of passing into some part of the Turkish dominions. Safie resolved to remain with her father until the moment of his departure, before which time the Turk renewed his promise that she should be united to his deliverer, and Felix remained with them in expectation of that event. And in the meantime, he enjoyed the society of the Arabian, who exhibited towards him the simplest and tenderest affection. They conversed with another through the means of an interpreter, and sometimes with the interpretation of looks, and Safie sang to him the divine airs of her native country. The Turk allowed this intimacy to take place and encouraged the hopes of the youthful lovers, while in his heart he had formed far other plans. He loathed the idea that his daughter should be united to a Christian, but he feared the resentment of Felix if he should appear lukewarm. For he knew that he was still in the power of his deliverer if he should choose to betray him to the Italian state which they inhabited. He revolved 1,000 plans by which he should be enabled to prolong the deceit until it might be no longer necessary, and secretly to take his daughter with him when he departed. His plans were facilitated by the news which arrived from Paris. The government of France were greatly enraged at the escape of their victim and spared no pains to detect and punish his deliverer. The plot of Felix was quickly discovered, and De Lacy and Agatha were thrown into prison. The news reached Felix and roused him from his dream of pleasure. His blind and aged father, and his gentle sister lay in a noisome dungeon while he enjoyed the free air and the society of her whom he loved. This idea was torture to him. He quickly arranged with the Turk that if the latter should find a favorable opportunity for escape before Felix could return to Italy, Safie should remain as a boarder at a convent at Leghorn. And then, quitting the lovely Arabian, he hastened to Paris and delivered himself up to the vengeance of the law, hoping to free De Lacy and Agatha by this proceeding. He did not succeed. They remained confined for 5 months before the trial took place, the result of which deprived them of their fortune and condemned them to a perpetual exile from their native country. They found a miserable asylum in the cottage in Germany, where I discovered them. Felix soon learned that the treacherous Turk, for whom he and his family endured such unheard-of oppression, on discovering that his deliverer was thus reduced to poverty and ruin, became a traitor to good feeling and honor, and had quitted Italy with his daughter, insultingly sending Felix a pittance of money to aid him, as he said, in some plan of future maintenance. Such were the events that preyed on the heart of Felix and rendered him, when I first saw him, the most miserable of his family. He could have endured poverty, and while this distress had been the meed of his virtue, he gloried in it. But the ingratitude of the Turk and the loss of his beloved Safie were misfortunes more bitter and irreparable. The arrival of the Arabian now infused new life into his soul. When the news reached Leghorn that Felix was deprived of his wealth and rank, the merchant commanded his daughter to think no more of her lover, but to prepare to return to her native country. The generous nature of Safie was outraged by this command. She attempted to expostulate with her father, but he left her angrily, reiterating his tyrannical mandate. A few days after, the Turk entered his daughter's apartment and told her hastily that he had reason to believe that his residence at Leghorn had been divulged and that he should speedily be delivered up to the French government. He had, consequently, hired a vessel to convey him to Constantinople, for which city he would sail in a few hours. He intended to leave his daughter under the care of a confidential servant, to follow at her leisure with the greater part of his property, which had not yet arrived at Leghorn. When alone, Safie resolved in her own mind the plan of conduct that it would become her to pursue in this emergency. A residence in Turkey was abhorrent to her. Her religion and her feelings were alike averse to it. By some papers of her father which fell into her hands, she heard of the exile of her lover and learnt the name of the spot where he then resided. She hesitated some time, but at length she formed her determination. Taking with her some jewels that belonged to her and a sum of money, she quitted Italy with an attendant, a native of Leghorn, but who understood the common language of Turkey, and departed for Germany. She arrived in safety at a town about 20 leagues from the cottage of De Lacy, when her attendant fell dangerously ill. Safie nursed her with the most devoted affection, but the poor girl died, and the Arabian was left alone, unacquainted with the language of the country and utterly ignorant of the customs of the world. She fell, however, into good hands. The Italian had mentioned the name of the spot for which they were bound, and after her death, the woman of the house in which they had lived took care that Safie should arrive in safety at the cottage of her lover. That's all you get. Short and sweet. It was a very active chapter, though. What's kind of weird? It's always best to blame Dermy for everything. Well played, Legatus. Oh, Dom, thank you for another 20. He says, thanks for going another chapter. You're welcome. It was a little short, though. Based being obnoxious to government. It's true. The monster noticed the mood in the cottage brightened when a woman named Safi. Is that pronounced right? Correctly? Safi? It's just because Safi sounds weird to me. Why are you summarizing the book, Legatus? Like, as I'm reading it. I appreciate it. Oh. Oh well. My memory is shite, as you all know. For anyone keeping track, this is the 4th tale in this onion of a book. You have layers. I don't know what she said. Cliff, I would love to know if you have a serious bone in your body, like at all. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out for these past 2 hours. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you, all of you. Please hit the like button if you liked it. Share it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Yeah. Follow me on the socials. These things here. YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, and Twitter. If you look up green-haired anti-liberal, I be there. Technically, Instagram is slightly different, but it'll still come up. And I will see you tomorrow on pregame for pregame on Static's channel. If he's nice, I will be there. Otherwise, yeah, Ballbusters on Friday and Screaming into the Void on Saturday. Then right back here next Wednesday. Everybody have a good night. I appreciate all of you.